Next question. David, Erdogan in Turkey, Orban in Hungary, Putin in Russia, Trump in America. Is the 21st century shaping up to be the century of illiberal democracies? The answer is, of course, yes. And we talked earlier in the week, we've observed that Donald Trump gravitates towards authoritarian strongman types, right? He seems to have trouble getting along with people like Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, a non-authoritarian, bilingual French Canadian. Not really anything that Trump sees as inspirational, apparently, in somebody like Justin Trudeau. But he seems very impressed with the Chinese president, for example, changing election law so that he could be president for life. He seems very taken by brutal North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un, who he described as incredibly funny, smart, a great negotiator, and just a good all-around person or something like that. He likes some of what President Erdogan from Turkey has done. Putin, I mean, listen, what can we say about Putin if you're Donald Trump at this point? So I believe that there are two factors here that could make the 21st century the century rather, of the illiberal democracy. Number one is the resurgence of true far-right authoritarian nationalism. And we're seeing that happen in many countries in Europe. We've seen that movement reinvigorated by Donald Trump here in the United States. It's disgusting. It's vile. It is counterproductive. It is not the path forward for Homo sapiens. I don't know how else to say it. But the other element to this is that Republicans have a very authoritarian tendency, right? Republicans partially, there's two reasons, and we discussed this earlier in the week. One of the reasons Republicans aren't actively punishing Trump for his apologia of Kim Jong-un or Vladimir Putin or whoever else is that they're just going to do whatever Trump says. And if Trump says it, it goes. But the other reason is that the right has these authoritarian tendencies. And aside from what used to be called the regressive left until that term was completely perverted and made useless, aside from these slightly sort of small enclaves of authoritarianism on the left, the right is predominantly the source of authoritarianism in the United States. They probably are realizing they also like a lot of these illiberal strongmen that we're seeing around the world. So I don't think it's any surprise when you really get down to the nuts and bolts of it.
Maybe it's true, too, that the left had its century, right? And that was the 20th century. We saw this, uprising of liberal democracies across the entire world ever since the World Wars. And maybe people are not liking the system that we have.
That would be sad.
And now we're going to turn to authoritarianism. That's not very good.
That would be depressing because I think that what we saw during the 20th century, things like the New Deal and all of that stuff, my view was those were merely the beginnings of a movement that was going to go, hopefully at some point, much further. The idea that that was as far as we're going to come, or it is as far as we're going to come, or was the furthest we came. I don't know exactly what the right grammatical phraseology is, but that now it's going to be a slide towards authoritarianism. That's nightmarishly depressing, but it's a very, very good question.